Well, hello there. My name is Evelyn Hayes. This year, I turned exactly 75 years old. At this age, what people often call the twilight of your life, the thing I wish for most isn't money or recognition or anything grand at all. It's just a little bit of family warmth, someone to listen just for a moment, a little bit of sharing. And if it's not too much to ask, maybe a small party where someone says my name, and I can smile, and I can say a few words of thanks for this life I've been given. You see, I have never once celebrated my own birthday. Back when I was young, with 3 children to raise, my life was a blur of working double shifts at the local diner, coming home with sore feet and the smell of coffee and fried onions clinging to my clothes. In those days, a birthday was a luxury I couldn't afford to even think about. I do remember one time, though, when I was about 40, a friend from work, a kind woman named Susan, brought me a small cupcake from the bakery down the street. When she handed it to me, I started to cry. Not from joy, but from sheer shock. I couldn't believe that anyone had remembered the day I was born. But I didn't eat that cupcake that year. I brought it home, carefully sliced it into 3 perfect little pieces, and gave them to my children. I told them I didn't have much of a sweet tooth, which was a lie. After that, I grew accustomed to letting my birthday pass by quietly. It became a private ritual, a hot cup of black tea, brewed just for myself, tearing a page off the wall calendar, a silent wish whispered only to my own heart. And so it went, year after year, until this spring. I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room, flipping through an old magazine, when a line in an article caught my eye. It said, "A woman of 75 deserves to spend one day just for herself." I stared at those words for a long time, the paper resting in my lap. I asked myself, could I do that? At this age, now that my children are all grown and settled with families of their own, could I finally do something just for me? Not for duty. Not as a mother or a grandmother, but simply as me, as Evelyn Hayes. That thought, like a seed that had been waiting for decades deep in the soil, finally pushed its way into the sunlight and began to sprout. In a rush of excitement, I started making a list of all the dishes my family loved. I wrote out invitations by hand and mailed them to a few of my oldest friends. I hadn't spoken to some of them in 20 years, but I still remembered their addresses. Still remembered the unique slope and curve of their handwriting from the Christmas cards we used to exchange. I spent the next few days just walking through the shops downtown. In the window of a small boutique, my eyes landed on a simple dress in a shade of pale lilac. It had a delicate, hand-embroidered pattern of flowers around the collar. That color? It had always been my favorite. I'd told myself when I was a young girl, when I'm an old woman, I'm going to wear all the beautiful lilac I want. But then, you get older, and you realize it doesn't quite work that way. Getting older doesn't automatically give you permission to do the things you've always wanted. This time, however, I bought it. Back home, standing in front of the full-length mirror, I tried it on and just looked at myself for a long time. My hair is silver now, my eyes aren't as sharp as they used to be, and my back has a permanent curve to it. But I saw something else too. I saw that I was still a woman, that I still had feelings and dreams, and that I had the right to be a little kind to myself. I spent more than 2 weeks getting ready for the day. I decided not to call it a birthday party. Instead, on the invitations, I called it a warm meal from Mom. I wanted to cook some of the old favorites myself. The slow-cooked pot roast with tender potatoes that my eldest daughter always loved. The savory meatloaf that made my youngest son ask for a second helping when he was just a little boy. And, of course, the baked macaroni and cheese that my grandchildren call Grandma's famous mac. I know it's difficult to get the whole family together at my age. Everyone is so busy, living in different places, with their own lives to lead. But I thought to myself, for a special day, for my 75th birthday, maybe they could spare just a couple of hours. I don't need fancy presents or a multi-layered cake with candles. All I want is a meal filled with the sound of my family's laughter. A photograph of all of us together, a few hugs, and the simple words, "Happy birthday, Mom." That alone would be enough to fill my heart to bursting. The morning of the party, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was soft as it streamed through the kitchen window, and a gentle spring breeze rustled the curtains. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, laid out my best tablecloth, the one with the embroidered edges, and set the table with the good china. My heart was thumping in my chest, a nervous, happy rhythm. It felt just like the day I took my oldest to her first day of school. So full of anticipation, and so very nervous. I stood before the mirror and looked at the lilac dress one more time. I fastened a small silver hairpin into my hair, an old gift from my husband. That man? He's been gone for nearly 20 years now. But I just know, that if he were still here, he would never have forgotten my birthday. He would never have let me be alone on a day as special as this one. I sat in my chair by the window, the one where the afternoon sun feels warmest, and I watched the little street in front of my house. In the distance, I could just make out a few figures, their shapes still blurry, walking toward me. Then I heard it, the sound of voices calling out, punctuated by a ripple of laughter. My heart began to pound against my ribs, a fast, hopeful rhythm. "We're here, Mom." It was my youngest daughter's voice, clear as a bell. I pushed myself up from the chair and smiled. The feeling that washed over me in that moment, it was the feeling of being wanted, of still being someone precious in my children's eyes. I had no idea at all that the very next minute would be the first sharp turn in the road, that it would be the start of a string of heartaches I would never, ever be able to forget. The moment they stepped inside, my daughter was all bright smiles, her arms loaded down with shopping bags. Her husband followed just behind her, holding our youngest grandson, who was squirming and giggling, a bundle of pure energy, who kept dropping his little toy cars on the floor. The air in the house suddenly felt full and boisterous, or at least, that's how it felt to me. I hurried to the front hall, taking the heavy bags from her hands. Thank you for coming all this way," I said, my voice a little breathless. "Come on in, hurry up now. I've just put the kettle on for some nice hot tea." My daughter wrapped me in a quick hug and gave my back a few gentle pats. But the first words out of her mouth, they weren't what I was expecting. "Mom, you're 75. Wow. But listen, you don't need to get a birthday cake or anything. We'll just wire you the money." I froze right where I stood. Her laughter bounced off the walls of the hallway, and it spread to her husband, and then it carried into the living room, where the other grandchildren were already glued to the television. "Just wire it to her," one of them mimicked in a sing-song voice. "These days, the best birthday cake is cold, hard cash, Grandma," another one joked. I stood there in the middle of the living room, holding the little gift bags I had put together for each of them, and I felt like a complete stranger in my own home. A knot tightened in my chest. It wasn't just the words themselves that hurt, it was the way they all turned it into a big joke, something to be laughed about. I was the only one not laughing. I just stood there, forcing my lips into the shape of a smile. I made myself laugh along. I didn't want them to see how alone I felt. In a small voice, I finally managed to reply, "That's fine, dear, as long as you're all happy." But in that instant, I felt something inside me crack ever so quietly. It was like one of those tiny, hairline fractures you sometimes see at the bottom of an old teacup. It seems like nothing at first, so small you can barely see it. But just know, that with enough time and enough heat, the whole cup is going to fall apart. I don't blame my children. To be perfectly honest, I had grown used to being an afterthought. Ever since they grew up, moved away for college, and started families of their own, I had learned the most important rule. Don't be a bother. I learned to call less, to ask for less, to visit less, because I was so afraid of getting in their way. I told myself that as long as my children were healthy, as long as they had happy homes, then I was content. But on that day, in the moment when the words "wire the money" were tossed around like a punchline, I realized something with a terrible clarity. I had spent so many years sacrificing my own needs that I had completely erased myself in their eyes. I wasn't their mother anymore, not the one who rocked them to sleep when they cried all night. I wasn't their grandmother anymore, not the one who stayed up late before Christmas, cooking their favorite dishes and sewing patches on their little winter coats. I had become just a person who gets a social security check, a walking bank, the nice old lady who would always open her purse with a gentle smile, no questions asked. Throughout the dinner that evening, I kept that smile plastered on my face. I brought out the dishes I'd made. I poured everyone water. I spooned extra helpings onto their plates, reminding them to chew slowly, now. They all talked and laughed, telling stories about their jobs, about school, about their friends. But not one of them asked about my health. Not one of them asked if their mother was happy. Not one of them mentioned that the reason we were all gathered there was because it was my birthday. I watched the cake I had ordered special from the bakery. A light fruit cake. Not too sweet, just the way I've always liked it. Sit on the sideboard. It just lay there, silent and untouched, like a piece of furniture. No one pointed to it, no one took a picture of it, and no one ever lit the candles so I could blow them out. I understood. My children weren't trying to be cruel. They had simply gotten used to the idea that their mother was a person who didn't need to be cared for, and I had gotten used to accepting everything, to swallowing every hurt in silence. As I reached up to wipe away a single tear that had fallen onto the tablecloth, my daughter happened to turn toward me. "You know, Mom," she said, her voice casual, "things have been a little tight for us financially lately. Do you think you could maybe wire us a few $100s? I mean, you get your Social Security check and all." I laughed. I actually, truly laughed out loud. It wasn't a laugh of happiness. It was the laugh of someone who finally sees the whole ugly truth laid bare. I realized then that even on my own birthday, I could not escape that one, cold, transactional phrase, "wire the money." I sank back into my chair, and my hand found the hem of my new lilac dress. I clutched the soft fabric tightly in my fist. It was damp, but I didn't know how long it had been wet with my tears. It wasn't anyone's fault. It really wasn't. I just felt so incredibly cold. Even in a room overflowing with people, a room filled with the sound of laughter, of children's feet pounding across the floor, of the clinking of plates and silverware, I felt as if I'd been left outside in the cold. It was as if I weren't the host of the party, or even an invited guest, but just one of the hidden, invisible staff members hired for the evening. When the meal was finally over, everyone started to clear away. My son-in-law dipped his head toward me, a quick, almost formal gesture. "That was a lot of fun today." "You got this, Mom," he said, already looking toward the door. "We're swamped with work stuff, so we'll have to get going. We'll celebrate your birthday properly next time, I promise." I just nodded and managed a small smile. And then I said the words I never in my life thought I would utter. "It's all right. It's all okay now. You see, I think this is going to be my last birthday party." And it was. It truly was. That day, I sat in the kitchen for a very long time. I was surrounded by the lingering scent of the cake that no one had touched, a mountain of dishes that still needed washing, and the pale lilac dress I was wearing, one sleeve now soaked through from the sink. I came to a quiet realization. Not everyone has enough time in their lives, or enough tenderness in their hearts to notice the sorrow of an old woman. But I understood something else, too, that when love is answered only with obligation and demands, I would have to be the one to learn how to love myself. If you could even call that a party, it was surely the one with the most laughter, but it was also, without a doubt, the loneliest party of my entire life. I kept smiling, even after my daughter's casual suggestion that they could just wire the money, followed by the little remark that was meant to remind me of my financial role. Besides, Mom gets her Social Security check. Yes, I just kept on smiling. It wasn't because I was strong. It was simply because I had grown so accustomed to playing the background, character in the story of everyone else's happiness. The meal was all laid out. On the table, there was a big pot of homemade chicken noodle soup, a shrimp cocktail on a bed of ice, a platter of crackers and cheese, a big bowl of crispy fried chicken that my grandson always loved, and for dessert, the same cream puffs my husband used to buy me on lazy weekend afternoons. I had spent the entire day before preparing everything, and I had barely slept the night before, worrying if the children would like the flavors, if everything would be just right. But during the entire party, not a single person mentioned the food. Everyone ate, of course, but there wasn't one word of, "Mom, this is delicious," or, "You must be exhausted, please. Sit down and rest for a while." No one asked me to sit down. I stayed on my feet the whole time, refilling water glasses, clearing away used napkins, picking up a spoon that had fallen on the floor, and wiping the mouth of a grandson who had spilled his juice. Amid all the cheerful noise and laughter, I could feel my heart being quietly, steadily crushed. They all chattered away about so many things. They talked about their jobs, about politics, about their children, about the neighbors, but the topic of Mom never once came up. No one ever asked me, "Mom, are you having a nice time today? Mom, do you feel loved? Mom, should we take a picture together to remember the day?" Not a single photograph was taken. The phone in my daughter's hand was only used for scrolling through her work emails, and my own camera, which I had set out on the sideboard that morning with fresh batteries, was never even turned on. I walked back into the kitchen and looked at the huge amount of leftover food. Some of those dishes had taken me 3 hours to prepare, and yet they sat there completely untouched. I started gathering them up, carefully covering each bowl with plastic wrap, telling myself, "We can eat this tomorrow." But the truth was, I knew that no one would eat it tomorrow either. I knew that, out of a habit built over decades, I would be the one to finish it all myself over the next several days. I stood by the sink, letting the hot water run over my hands, watching the soap foam up in layers with the sound of scrubbing. The laughter from the living room still echoed through the house, but it sounded like it was coming from another world, a world where I didn't belong. In my own home, at a party I had thrown for myself, I felt like a servant. I wasn't angry at anyone. I was just sad. Sad because I never imagined a day would come when, even on my own birthday, I couldn't be the main character. When the party was over, everyone cleaned up with an unnerving speed. My son-in-law was already folding up the extra chairs. "Mom, we'll leave the rest of the cleaning to you, okay?" he said. "We have an early meeting tomorrow morning." My youngest grandson had started to cry because he couldn't watch cartoons anymore. My daughter turned back to me, giving me a light, easy smile, as if it were nothing at all. "Oh, Mom, hang on to our present for you. It's the one in the pink bag." I turned and looked over at the pink gift bag sitting by the bookshelf. I opened it. Inside was a large box of ginseng health supplements. It was still sealed, and on top, a bright red sticker read, "Half-price sale, nearing expiration date." I didn't know if I was supposed to be happy or if I was supposed to cry. Perhaps this is what old people are supposed to receive. Perhaps this was what they considered a suitable gift. But if there had been just one more thing, a handwritten card perhaps, or even a single sentence like, "Mom, you've had it so hard for so long," then maybe I wouldn't have felt like just another piece of furniture in the room. When it was time for everyone to leave, I stood at the front door, nodding and offering my goodbyes. I kept that smile on my face, the same one that had fooled so many people for so many years into thinking I was perfectly fine. My daughter leaned in and gave me a light kiss on the cheek, her voice a soft whisper. "Ah, don't be sad, Mom. It's your birthday after all. You should be happy." I nodded. "I am, dear. I'm happy." And then the door clicked shut, and I turned my back to it, stepping back into the house, in the place that I once called the heart of my family. The tears I had been holding back finally began to fall, and they wouldn't stop. I sat down in my favorite armchair, clutching the wrinkled fabric of my pale lilac dress, and I said to myself, out loud in the empty room, "Well, the birthday is over now, Evelyn." No one blew out any candles. No one sang "Happy Birthday." But at least the grandchildren are all healthy and strong. And I have made it through one more birthday. I couldn't sleep that night. I took out an old notebook and wrote a few lines. On the very last line of the page, I wrote, "From next year on, I don't need to celebrate my birthday. Not because no one will be here to celebrate with me, but because I no longer need to hope for it." I put the pen down, closed the notebook, and let out a long, slow breath. I used to think a birthday was just another ordinary day, that it didn't matter, one way or the other. But now I understand. When an old person celebrates a birthday, what they really want isn't a gift or a big party. They just want to be remembered. They just want someone to look them in the eye and say, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for being here." Before dawn, a pale light began to filter through the thin curtains. I had been awake for a long time. I didn't have any appointments to keep or any errands to run. I couldn't stay in bed any longer. 100 different thoughts had swirled through my head all night, and I had finally made a decision. I was going to do something I had never once in my life considered doing. I slipped out of my room, walking softly so I wouldn't wake the neighbors. As I passed the long mirror in the hallway, I paused for a moment. Yesterday's lilac dress was still hanging on a hook. I stared at it, then slowly shook my head. No, I don't need to be pretty today. I chose the plainest clothes I owned, a light-colored blouse and a pair of old, comfortable slacks that had no tears in them. I didn't put on any makeup, and I simply pulled my hair back into a small bun. I put on my glasses, picked up my little purse, and took an umbrella from the stand by the door. The sky looked like it was threatening to rain. Before I left, I glanced back at the kitchen, the very room that had been filled with the sound of my children's laughter just yesterday. Today, there was only silence. "Let's go, Evelyn," I whispered to myself. Not everyone gets a second chance to start over, but I think I just got one. I walked down to the bank at the end of the street, the same one I went to every month to send money to my children. The teller at the counter knew my face well. Every time I came in, he would greet me with a kind smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes. Are you here to send some money to the grandkids again today?" Out of habit, I started to nod, but this time I took a deep breath and I said, slowly and clearly, "No. Today, I'd like to open a new account." The young teller looked up, his face filled with surprise. "Oh, a new account?" I nodded. "And I have another request." I placed a folder of documents on the counter between us. My savings account, statements, my driver's license, my birth certificate, the deed to my house, and even detailed copies of my Social Security statements from the past few years. I want to transfer my entire life savings to make a lump sum payment for a private room at the nicest assisted living community in the state. And at the same time, I need you to help me get in touch with a lawyer's office. I want to have my will redrafted. I want my daughter's name formally removed as a beneficiary. The bank fell quiet. The young man hesitated, then asked gently, Are you absolutely sure about this, Mrs. Hayes?" I smiled. It was the calmest, most peaceful smile I had ever felt on my own face. "Young man, I have lived to be 75 years old, and in all that time, I have learned that there are only two things you can be absolutely sure of in this world. The first is that no one will be by your side forever, and the second is that if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you." He nodded softly and began to do exactly as I had asked. When most of the paperwork was finished, he handed me one last form. It asked me to state the reason for amending my will. I picked up the pen, thought for only a moment, and then I wrote, "They don't need an inheritance. They just want the money wired." The moment I put down the pen, I felt a weight I had been carrying for years finally lift from my heart. The wound, it probably won't fade right away, but as I wrote those words, I finally realized that I wasn't the same mother anymore, not the one who would just endure everything in silence, year after year. I had chosen to stand up, not to fight back, not to cause a scene, but simply to protect what was left of my own heart. After I left the bank, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I walked into a little diner on the corner of Main Street. It was a cozy, old-fashioned place, the kind with red vinyl booths and a long countertop. It was the place my husband and I used to go on special occasions, back when a night out was a rare and precious thing for us. The owner, a kind man who had taken over from his father, saw me and a warm smile spread across his face. "Well, look who it is. Haven't seen you in a long time, Evelyn," he said, wiping the counter with a cloth. "The usual? A bowl of the chicken noodle soup?" I just gave a small nod. I sat by myself in a booth in the corner, staring at the steam rising from the thick, white ceramic bowl. So many memories came flooding back to me in that quiet little diner. Back then, if I ever so much as sighed and said I was tired, my husband would quietly get on his old bicycle, the one with the squeaky chain, and ride all the way down to the bakery on the other side of town. He'd come back with a warm apple fritter, still fragrant and dusted with sugar, just for me. If I ever grew quiet for too long, lost in my own thoughts, he would gently put a hand on my shoulder and just ask, "What's on your mind?" But now, no matter how long I sit in silence, there's no one left to ask me that. There's no one to notice. But that's all right. I am still me. I still have my pride. I still have the memories of the good times locked safely in my heart, and I finally have enough clarity to know that if you aren't loved the way you deserve to be, you have to be the one to love yourself. When I eventually got home that afternoon, I looked at my cell phone. 20 missed calls. Every single one was from my daughter. There were text messages too, a long string of them. "Mom, where did you go? Are you okay? Are you mad? Yesterday was just a joke. Mom, I'm sorry. Please just say something." I read every one of them. I didn't reply. It wasn't because I was angry, not anymore. It was because I know that words alone can't mend a broken heart. An apology is just a sound until it's followed by a change in action. I'm waiting to see if, after all the panicked words, there will be a real, heartfelt gesture from my daughter. If there isn't one, then I will leave quietly, just as I have lived quietly for all these years. I took out my little notebook, the one where I had written down my decision, and I added one more line at the very bottom of the page. "You did it, Evelyn. For the first time in your life, not for anyone else, not for anything else, but just for you." I closed the notebook and brewed a cup of hot tea. Outside, the rain had started to fall, a soft, steady patter against the window panes. The sound of each drop tapping against the eaves of the roof was a quiet rhythm, like the gentle beginning of a new chapter in my life. There would be no more waiting, no more compromising. All that was left was freedom. That night, I didn't go back home. My little house sat on its quiet street, the porch light on just like always, a welcoming beacon in the dark. But the woman who lived there, the one who always waited, was already gone. I took only a small overnight bag with a few changes of clothes, my notebook, my cell phone with the ringer turned off, and a single old photograph. It was of my husband and me, taken on our 10th wedding anniversary, when we were both so young and our whole lives felt like they were stretched out before us, full of promise. I drove for a couple of hours until I reached a small motel by the lake, a place my husband and I had stopped at once, decades ago, on a rare weekend away. It was a place where no one would know me, where no one would ever think to look for me, and because of that, I felt a sense of peace settle over me as I pulled into the gravel parking lot. The room was small and simple. There was just a plain metal bed frame with a clean handmade quilt, and a pair of thick, dark curtains that blocked out the lights from the road. I set my bag down on the luggage rack, sat at the little wooden desk by the window, and boiled some water in the small electric kettle for tea. I opened a sleeve of saltine crackers I'd bought at a gas station along the way. There was no noise here. No one needing anything from me. No one calling out Mom and then asking for money. There was only the sound of the wind coming off the lake and the faint, rhythmic chirping of crickets outside my window. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I ate a meal that was just for me. I poured my tea and stared out at the dark, glassy surface of the water reflecting the night sky. My heart felt as light as a cloud. "Evelyn," I whispered to myself in the quiet room, "today is the first time you've truly rested." My cell phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't look at it. I didn't feel curious, and I didn't feel annoyed. I just wanted to let the silence speak for me. Let it say everything I couldn't. Sometime close to midnight, I glanced over and saw that there were more than 20 missed calls. I quietly opened the call log. It was all the same number, my daughter's. There were more text messages too. "Mom, where are you? Mom, I came by the house and you weren't here. I'm sorry. Yesterday was just a joke. Please don't be mad. Mom, I'm worried. Your phone is going straight to voicemail. Please answer me." I read them, but again, I didn't reply. It wasn't because I wanted to make her worry. It was because I had finally understood something with a painful clarity. That, as long as I kept quietly enduring everything, as long as I kept swallowing my hurt, no one would ever truly see how deep my wounds were. When my daughter was just a little girl, if she fell and scraped her knee, I would drop everything and run to her side. It didn't matter if I was in the middle of making dinner, if my hands were deep in a sink full of soapy water, or even if I was running a fever myself. My world stopped until she was okay. That's what a mother does. But I see now that in doing so, I taught her that my pain never mattered as much as hers, and that was a lesson I had to unteach her, even if it meant breaking both our hearts a little more. But now, when I finally collapsed from the loneliness, from being taken for granted, from being treated like nothing more than a walking ATM, no one even noticed. It was only when I was gone that my children finally realized that their mother was a person too. A person who could be hurt, a person who could get tired. The next morning, I was sitting in the dining room of a little inn by the lake. I had just finished a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs, buttered toast, and a strip of bacon when I finally opened my cell phone. The screen lit up with nearly 40 missed calls. My son-in-law's number was among them. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were that sad. Where are you? Just send us a text and we'll come get you. Please don't just leave like that. We honestly didn't mean any of it." I let out a quiet little laugh. Not because I was ready to forgive them, but because, for the first time, I could see the genuine panic in them. The panic of children who had always believed, deep down, that their mother would never, ever leave. I took a short walk along the shore of the lake. A cool morning breeze was blowing, birds were singing in the trees, and a few other older folks who were out for a walk nodded at me as they passed, as if we were old friends. A sense of calm washed over me. The loneliness and the tears from my birthday, that feeling of being left behind in a room full of laughter, it was all gone. I had chosen this quiet moment for myself, and I felt happy. That night, another message came from my daughter. "Mom, will you come home tomorrow? I cleaned your room for you. Please don't be alone. I'm worried you're not used to it. I'm so sorry." I stared at the words for a long time. I know that an apology is the easiest thing in the world to say, and the easiest thing to forget. I had forgiven them so many times before. They're just my children after all, I would tell myself. But today, I wasn't just the mother who forgives everything anymore. I was a woman, a person who needed to be respected, to be heard, and to be loved for who I am. I opened my notebook and added a few more lines. "If you truly want your mother to come home, you will have to show me with your actions. If you can't, then just as I am learning to live without all of you, you will have to learn to live without a mother." I put down my pen and closed the book. The moon was so bright that night. I looked up at the sky and smiled. "It's okay now, my dear," I whispered, as if talking to my husband. "I believe I'm going to live a life without just enduring from now on." I stayed at that lakeside inn for 3 days. Then, without any warning, without a single phone call, I went home. I just woke up one morning and my heart felt light, my feet felt steady, and I knew I was ready to go back, not to go back to being the mother of old, but to finally put an end to my role as the mother who endures. The kitchen table was still covered with dirty dishes from the day I left. The presents from my birthday were sitting on the living room sofa. A bag of carrots bought on sale, a gift box with a torn corner, and the empty box from the birthday cake I had ordered for myself. I took a deep breath. There were no tears, no feeling of bitterness. I just knew that from this day forward, there was one thing I had to do, not to punish anyone, but to teach my children a lesson. Their mother is not a permanent fixture, like the air they breathe. I picked up the phone and called my daughter. "I'm home," I said. "Can you and the family come over tomorrow? I want to have a family meeting." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds before she quickly replied, "Yes, yes, of course. We'll be there." What is this about, Mom?" I said calmly. "There are just some things we need to talk about, clearly." The next day, a fine, misty rain was falling. My daughter and her family arrived earlier than usual. They all looked worried as they stepped inside. My son-in-law lowered his head as he greeted me. My daughter gave a strained, awkward smile, her eyes a little red. My grandson was quiet, not boisterous like he usually was. I showed them to the living room table. Today, there were no cookies or iced tea like I would normally set out. There was only a single, clear plastic folder containing a stack of papers. As they all sat down, I looked at each of them in turn and I began to speak slowly. "First of all, thank you for coming. I know you've all been worried these past few days, but I hope that after today, you won't have to worry anymore." I placed the folder on the table and gently pushed it toward them. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is a document certifying that I have transferred my entire net worth. My savings accounts, the deed to this house, my pension, and even the small portfolio of stocks your father left for you children into a lifetime care contract with a private assisted living community." The room went completely still. My daughter's eyes were wide as she stared at me, and then she whipped her head around to look at her husband. "Mom, what on earth are you saying right now?" I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I calmly took out another piece of paper, my new will. I have also had my will redrafted. In it, I have formally removed your name from the list of heirs. All of my assets have been transferred. It is legal, it is notarized, and it cannot be reversed. My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. I had rehearsed these words in my mind, over and over again since the night before. My daughter said nothing. She just stared at the papers on the table, her face turning as pale as a sheet. I offered a small smile and looked her directly in the eyes. "Next week, I'll be moving into the community. I will have my own private room, a full care staff, and a doctor on call. I won't be a burden to any of you. I won't cause you any more trouble. With the money I have saved for so many years, the funds you once called so convenient, coming from my Social Security check, I have paid for my own care for the rest of my life." My son-in-law finally found his voice, stammering, "Mom, isn't this a little extreme?" I shook my head gently. "No, it isn't extreme at all. It's just, I decided it's time for me to live by the rules that you all taught me. If love is something that can be calculated in dollars and cents, then I suppose I needed to learn how to do the math myself." I turned to my daughter, the one who had called me more than 40 times in 2 nights. "You joked once, didn't you? You said I didn't need a birthday cake, that you could just wire me the money. Well, I finally made a transfer. Not of money, but of the rest of my life. I am going to live alone now, just like I sat all alone at my own birthday party." My words weren't cold, and they weren't light. They carried the weight of every hurt I had swallowed as a mother for more than 30 years, little by little, piece by piece. My daughter began to cry. The tears streamed down her face, and she didn't even try to wipe them away. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I never should have said those things. I never realized you were so unhappy." I nodded. My heart, as always, felt soft toward her. "I know you didn't. You never thought about it. And that's why I had to do something to make you remember." My son-in-law was silent. Our little grandson hid behind his mother, his face a picture of confusion and alarm. I lowered my head and said my final words to them. "From now on, if you want to see me, you will need to make an appointment. And when you come, please come as family, not as my heir." A heavy silence filled the room. The sound of the rain dripping from the eaves outside was like the sighing of time itself. No apology, no regret, no belated hug had the power to change my mind now. Because today, I had chosen a path where I would walk on my own 2 feet, freely, and with a clear mind. A month has passed since I moved into the assisted living community. Life here is quieter than I ever imagined. Every morning, I wake at 6 o'clock. I make myself a cup of warm tea, open the window to let in the morning light, and I quietly watch the other residents strolling through the small garden below. Some are reading, some are tending to the plants, and some, like me, are simply looking up at the sky. No one here asks me who I wired money to today. No one asks me to help them with anything. No one calls out mom, and then follows it with words that feel like a knife in my heart. Here, I don't have to serve as the backdrop for someone else's happiness. I am just living, as a person. I am seen. I am called by my name. I am invited to share a meal. And I am not the one pouring tea for everyone else. Lying in my new bed at night, I have often found myself looking back over my life. When I gave birth to my daughter, my husband was a long-haul truck driver. He didn't make it to the hospital in time. I gave birth alone. I held my child alone. And I learned how to be a mother, alone. I never complained to anyone. When my daughter didn't get into her first choice university, I held back my own tears and I lied to her. I told her I wasn't disappointed, that she could take a year off and study again if she wanted. Then I went to the bank and took out a second mortgage on our house to keep my promise that she could attend a good private college. For her 18th birthday, I bought her the expensive leather boots she had been wanting for months. No one remembered that it was my birthday too. And then, I remember the first time my daughter said to me, "Mom, you just stay home now. We'll take care of everything." I cried with such happiness. I thought I could finally rest. But I was so wrong. That rest they offered wasn't meant for me to be loved. It was meant for me to stay behind the scenes, to be moved off the stage so that I could no longer be part of the show. I don't blame my children. I truly don't. I understand their generation is so busy, so weighed down by pressure, so swept up in the current of their own lives. Sometimes, it's not that they set out to hurt their mother on purpose. It's just that they forget their mother is a person too, a person with her own hopes, a person with her own feelings, a person who has days when all she wants in the world is for someone to ask, "Mom, how are you doing today?" For so long, I made a vow to myself. I told myself that it was enough just to be near my children, to listen to their stories, to see the smiles on my grandchildren's faces. But you can't live forever on the memory of what used to be, a constant stream of indifference. It can wear away at even a mother's endless patience. And one day, when a mother finally stops waiting, that silence becomes the final line in the sand. I can still remember the morning of that birthday party as if it were yesterday. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I washed every single plate by hand. I put fresh flowers in every little vase. And I carefully smoothed out every wrinkle in the tablecloth. All I wanted was for someone, anyone, to walk into that kitchen and say, "Mom, please, don't do a thing today. Let us take care of everything." But no one ever said a word. I washed the dishes, I cleared the table, I handed out napkins, and I stood on the outside of every conversation. I was wearing the beautiful lilac dress I had dreamed of for decades, and not a single person offered a compliment. There was only that one joke. "Just wire us the money." And it landed like a slap across the face. No one in that room had any idea how deeply those words cut me. After I left home, my daughter sent me message after message. Sometimes she would send a family photo. Other times she'd tell me about my grandson's report card. Sometimes it was as simple as, "Mom, have you eaten?" I read every single one of them, but I never replied. It wasn't because I was being cold. It was because I needed time for myself, time to heal. People seem to think that an apology is enough to fix everything. But for someone like me, who has dedicated her entire life to taking care of others, what I needed wasn't a word. It was a change. I don't expect my children to be perfect, but if they are still going to call me mom, then I need that title to come with understanding, with gratitude, and with just a little bit of affection. If it can't, then I would rather they not call me that at all. I still send my grandchildren birthday presents. I send them cards for the holidays. I even contribute a little to their college funds, wiring the money directly to the school's accounts without it ever passing through my daughter's hands. I haven't cut the ties completely. I have simply adjusted the distance between us. Enough distance so that I can't be hurt anymore. Enough distance to help my children finally realize that I am no longer the mother who will silently sacrifice everything for them. Someone here at my new home asked me the other day, "At your age, living all by yourself, so far from your children and grandchildren, aren't you lonely?" I just smiled. "Yes, I am lonely," I told her, "but I am also at peace. For the first time in my entire life, I don't feel like I'm living just to keep someone else happy. I eat when I'm hungry. I sleep when I'm tired. I laugh when something brings me joy, and I cry when I need to. I am finally just me, not the role of the kindly mothers that someone else created for me. It's only now that I finally understand. Being a mother doesn't mean you have to set aside your self-respect. It doesn't mean you have to laugh through the pain, stay silent when you're wounded, and give until there's nothing left. Even a mother has the right to stop, to draw a line, especially when her love starts to feel like a transaction, something to be measured and weighed. My life? It hasn't been a short one, but it's not long enough to spend what's left of it swallowing my tears. If these next few years are the last chapter of my story, then I want them to be written with peace, with lightness, and with grace. I don't need anyone's money. I don't need to hear an empty voice calling out, "Mom." If I can just wake up every morning and feel that I am living for myself, then that is more than enough. My story ends here today. I'm not telling you this because I want anyone to feel sorry for me, or to feel angry on my behalf. I just wanted to share this chapter of a life that has passed, a time that was, filled with hope, then with hurt, and then, finally, with the strength to stand up and tell myself that even the most devoted mother deserves to be loved in the right way. For so long I lived in silence. I thought being a mother meant I had to endure. I thought that as long as my children were happy, it didn't matter if I was hurting a little. But I've realized that if you don't take care of yourself, you will eventually lose even the right to feel your own sorrow. Horizal, I started walking, not to run away from anything, but to find my way back to myself. Growing older isn't just about the years passing. It's when your love is no longer seen that you truly start to feel old. And today, as I tell you this story, I no longer feel any pity for myself. I feel a sense of peace, a true and profound calm, because I finally did something I never had the courage to do for all those years. I placed my hand over my heart, and I said to myself, "Evelyn, you've done so well. You did a good job. Thank you, all of you, for listening to my story all the way to the end. Thank you for giving your time to an old mother who has little left but her memories and a small piece of her pride. If my story has touched your heart in any way, then please, just for one day, go and hug your mother. Tell her how much you appreciate her before it's too late. I'll see you all again next time.